She dumped me with, "We'll still be friends." I said, "Of course." Then she learned friendship doesn't cover bills, especially once I dated her neighbor. Let me explain how 3 years of what I thought was building something real ended on a Wednesday evening with Olivia sitting across from me at our kitchen table, wine glass in hand, delivering lines she'd clearly rehearsed in front of the bathroom mirror. I'm Ryan, 29, and I restore vintage boats for a living, the kind of work where you spend months bringing someone's grandfather's sailing vessel back to life, where patience and precision matter more than speed. I met Olivia at a marina summer festival 3 years ago when she was photographing sunset reflections off the hulls and I was replacing teak decking on a 1967 Chris Craft. She was vibrant, creative, passionate about capturing light and movement through her camera lens. I was drawn to her energy, the way she saw beauty in peeling paint and weathered rope. We started dating seriously within 2 months, and by our 6-month anniversary, she'd moved into my waterfront apartment overlooking the harbor. The place wasn't cheap, $2,800 monthly for 2 bedrooms with a balcony facing the marina, but my boat restoration business was doing well enough that I could handle it comfortably. Olivia contributed occasionally when she landed commercial photography gigs, but her real passion was fine art photography, the kind that got gallery showings but didn't pay rent. I didn't mind covering most expenses because I believed we were building toward something permanent, toward a future where her career would eventually stabilize and we'd be actual partners in every sense. Looking back, I should have paid closer attention to how she framed our arrangement, not as temporary support while she established herself, but as the natural order of things because my work was practical, while hers was artistic. That Wednesday evening, she'd made pasta primavera, my favorite, which should have been my first warning sign since she rarely cooked. We ate with uncomfortable small talk about her upcoming gallery showing and my current project, restoring a 1950s wooden sailboat for a retired maritime professor. Then she set down her fork with that expression I'd seen her practice before difficult client conversations, the one where she tilted her head slightly and softened her eyes like she was delivering compassionate truth. "Ryan, I need to talk to you about us, about where we're heading and what I need for my growth as an artist." I set down my own fork, already sensing where this was going from the formal tone and rehearsed phrasing. "Okay, what's on your mind?" She took a breath, swirling wine in her glass like this was just another deep conversation we'd have and move past. "I've been doing a lot of self-reflection lately, really examining what I need to develop my creative vision authentically. I think we need to acknowledge that we're in different places right now, pursuing different kinds of futures." The careful word choices, the therapy speak, the way she avoided saying break up directly, it was all very Olivia, cushioning hard truths in soft language. "You're breaking up with me," I said, keeping my voice level and calm. Her eyebrows twitched slightly, like I'd skipped ahead in her script. "I'm saying I need independence right now, space to pursue my photography career seriously without the constraints of a traditional relationship structure. These past 3 years have been wonderful, truly, but I'm feeling suffocated by the expectations and obligations. Suffocated by expectations like occasionally contributing to rent or planning our weekends together instead of spontaneously disappearing for 3-day photography expeditions." I nodded slowly, watching her face for tells. "What brought this on specifically?" She shifted in her chair, foot tapping that nervous rhythm against the hardwood floor. "I've been talking to other artists at the gallery, people who've made it in fine art photography, and they all say the same thing: you can't create authentic work when you're tied down to domestic routines and someone else's schedule. I need freedom to travel when inspiration strikes, to focus completely on my craft without worrying about relationship maintenance." Translation: she'd met other photographers who told her she should be living some romanticized bohemian artist lifestyle instead of splitting grocery shopping with a boat carpenter. And Marcus thinks, she started, then caught herself, but not quickly enough. "Marcus?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Marcus was this pretentious gallery owner in his late 30s who wore scarves indoors and spoke exclusively in artistic metaphors. He'd been mentoring Olivia for the past 4 months, offering her exhibition opportunities and introducing her to his network of established photographers. "Marcus has just been incredibly supportive of my development as an artist," she said quickly, cheeks flushing slightly. He's helped me see that I've been playing it safe, compromising my vision to maintain comfort and stability. Real artists take risks, embrace uncertainty, live authentically without being anchored by conventional expectations. I almost laughed at the irony, her talking about embracing uncertainty while living rent-free in my apartment, using my workshop to build custom frames, storing thousands of dollars of photography equipment in my climate-controlled spare room. So what exactly are you proposing? I asked, keeping my tone neutral and measured. Well, I don't want us to completely end things, she said, brightening slightly like we were finally getting to the good part of her pitch. I think we're better as friends, as people who support each other's journeys without the pressure and expectations of a romantic relationship. We have such a strong connection, such shared history. I don't want to lose that just because the romantic aspect isn't working anymore. There it was, the classic downgrade pitch, where she got to keep all the benefits of my presence, support, and resources without any of the obligations or commitment of actually being my girlfriend. Friends, I repeated, letting the word sit between us. Exactly. We can still be close, still spend time together, still be important parts of each other's lives. I'll always care about you, Ryan. I just need to do it in a way that doesn't feel so constraining right now. The way she said it, all bright and hopeful, like she was offering me some kind of generous compromise instead of demoting me to unpaid support staff for her artistic aspirations. I could see her mental calculus clearly. She wanted the freedom to explore whatever was happening with Marcus or anyone else who fit her reimagined artist identity, while keeping me available as her emotional support system, handyman, and financial safety net for when the bohemian lifestyle got inconvenient. And I'd still live here, she continued, gathering momentum now that I wasn't arguing. I mean, nothing has to change practically speaking. We're already comfortable with our arrangement, and I really can't afford anywhere else right now with the gallery show expenses. We're mature adults. We can absolutely maintain a friendship while sharing space. She actually thought I'd agree to this, to continuing to subsidize her life while she explored other options, to being her backup plan dressed up as friendship. I looked at her sitting there in the apartment I paid for, wearing the casual confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences for her choices, and something clicked into place. You're right, I said calmly, watching her face light up with relief. We absolutely should be friends. Oh, thank God, she breathed out, shoulders dropping as tension released. I was so worried you'd make this difficult, that you'd be angry or try to convince me we should stay together. This is so much healthier, so much more evolved than how most couples handle these transitions. Friends support each other's growth, I continued, keeping my expression neutral. They respect each other's choices and boundaries. They want what's best for each other even when it's uncomfortable. Exactly. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand, that old comforting gesture that used to mean something. You always understand, Ryan. That's what I've always loved about you. You're so stable, so rational. Some guys would completely lose it right now, but you get it. I did get it, just not in the way she thought. I understood that she'd convinced herself she could have everything. The freedom to pursue whatever validated her artistic ego while keeping me locked in place as her practical support system. She wanted to feel like the protagonist of some romantic independent artist narrative while I played the understanding friend who'd always be there when she needed something fixed, paid for, or emotionally validated. So we're okay? She asked, smiling with genuine warmth now that she'd gotten what she wanted. We're going to be just fine, I said, meaning every word but in a completely different context than she understood. That night, after she'd gone to bed in what was now apparently just her room, I sat on the balcony looking out at the marina, watching moonlight ripple across the water and listening to the gentle percussion of halyards against masts. 3 years of covering her rent, her utilities, her emergency car repairs, her equipment purchases, her gallery submission fees. All while she'd been shopping for something better, convinced she deserved more than a boat carpenter who actually showed up and did the work. The irony was almost beautiful in its symmetry. She wanted independence and friendship on her terms, and I was absolutely going to give her exactly that, along with every single consequence she'd been too entitled to anticipate. Friends don't subsidize each other's lifestyles. Friends don't drop everything for each other's emergencies. Friends maintain healthy boundaries and separate lives. I pulled out my phone and texted my buddy Coleman, who'd been trying to convince me for months to move into his converted boathouse with workshop space and harbor access. "That room still available? I can move in this weekend." His response came back within 2 minutes. "Hell yes, brother. About damn time. When you coming to look at it?" I smiled, typing back, "Tomorrow morning." "And Coleman? Don't mention this to anyone yet. I want to handle this my way." The next few days were going to be very interesting, watching Olivia discover what friendship actually looked like when the person she'd demoted decided to take her exactly at her word. I could see her mental calculus clearly. She wanted the freedom to explore whatever was happening with Marcus or anyone else who fit her reimagined artist identity, while keeping me. I visited Coleman's boathouse the next morning while Olivia was at her gallery meeting with Marcus, and the place was perfect. Converted warehouse space right on the water with direct boat slip access, a fully equipped workshop, and enough room for both living and working without compromise. Coleman had renovated the entire second floor into a studio apartment while maintaining the ground level as shared workspace for his marine engine repair business. The rent was $950 monthly, less than a third of what I'd been paying, and included workshop access plus utilities. I signed the lease agreement on the spot, arranged to move in that Saturday, and headed back to the apartment to set my plan in motion. Olivia returned around 2 that afternoon, practically glowing with whatever validation Marcus had provided, chattering about exhibition opportunities and the importance of artistic integrity while I made myself coffee and listened with polite disinterest. That evening, I waited until she was settled on the couch editing photos on her laptop before dropping the news with the same casual tone she'd used to demote our relationship. "So I found a new place and I'm moving out this Saturday," I said, setting down my coffee mug. She looked up sharply, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean moving out? We talked about this. Nothing has to change practically. We're friends now. Friends can share space." "Friends can," I agreed pleasantly. "But I found a great opportunity at Coleman's boathouse workshop, and it makes more sense for my business to have dedicated workspace with direct water access. Plus the rent's significantly cheaper, which means I can invest more in equipment and take on bigger restoration projects." The confusion shifted towards something that looked like panic as the implications started registering. "But what about here, this apartment? I can't afford this place on my own, Ryan. You know my photography income isn't stable enough for Marina View rent. Right, which is why you'll need to find a roommate pretty quickly," I said, keeping my tone helpful and supportive like any good friend would. "There are plenty of people looking for waterfront locations. You should start advertising immediately, mention the balcony view and proximity to the arts district. That'll attract the right demographic." She set her laptop aside, fully focused now on the crisis unfolding. "Ryan, this is crazy. You can't just leave me with a $2,800 monthly lease I can't cover. What am I supposed to do? Find a roommate who can split it with you, or find a more affordable place that fits your actual budget? Those are pretty standard options when you're living independently." The word independently landed exactly how I intended it to, reminding her that independence was what she'd specifically requested. "But I have the gallery show in 3 weeks, and Marcus is introducing me to collectors who might commission work. I can't be dealing with housing stress right now when I need to focus on my art." I nodded sympathetically. "That does sound stressful. Unfortunately, my decision is already made. I signed the lease this morning and gave Coleman first and last month's rent. I'll honor my obligations here through the end of the month since my name's still on the lease, but after that, you're responsible for the full amount or whatever arrangement you make with a new roommate." Her expression cycled through disbelief, calculation, and then anger as she realized I wasn't negotiating. "This is because of the breakup, isn't it? You're punishing me for being honest about what I need." "Not at all," I said calmly. "You were absolutely right that we needed to transition to friendship. Friends maintain separate households, separate finances, separate lives. I'm just implementing healthy boundaries like any mature adult would after a relationship ends. You should be proud. This is exactly the independence you said you needed." Independence doesn't mean abandoning someone in a financial crisis. I'm not abandoning you. I'm giving you 3 weeks' notice and fulfilling my legal obligations through month's end. That's more consideration than most people get. Plus, I'll help you draft a roommate ad if you want. Make sure you highlight all the apartment's best features to attract quality candidates. She stared at me like I'd become a completely different person, which in a way I had. I'd become the friend she'd requested instead of the boyfriend she'd taken for granted. What about the lease termination fee if I can't find someone? The landlord said it's $3,500 to break early, and that gets split between all tenants listed. Then you'd owe $1,750 and I'd owe $1,750, assuming you chose to terminate rather than find a roommate or take over the full rent yourself. But I'm confident you'll figure something out. You're resourceful and creative. That's what attracted me to you in the first place. The patronizing encouragement was deliberate, the same tone she'd used when explaining why she needed to prioritize her art over our relationship. From her balcony next door, I caught movement. Our neighbor Harper glancing over while watering her plants, clearly hearing every word through the open sliding doors. Harper was around our age, worked as an architectural drafter, kept to herself mostly but always offered polite waves when we crossed paths. She'd witnessed plenty of our relationship over the past year since balconies were only separated by a decorative partition, and from her expression, she was very interested in this particular conversation. Olivia noticed her watching and lowered her voice, hissing with barely contained fury. "You're really going to do this? Just walk away and leave me scrambling?" "I'm walking toward a better situation for my business and personal growth," I corrected. "The fact that it creates inconvenience for you is an unfortunate consequence of your decision to end our romantic relationship. But that's what happens when situations change. People adapt and move forward. I'm sure you'll do the same." "This isn't adapting, this is sabotage." "Sabotage would be if I'd somehow caused your financial instability. I didn't make you pursue fine art photography instead of more lucrative commercial work. I didn't make you spend money on gallery submissions instead of building savings. I didn't make you choose independence over partnership. Those were your decisions, and now you get to experience the full reality of those choices without me subsidizing the costs." She stood up abruptly, pacing the living room like a caged animal. "I thought you cared about me, that even if we weren't together romantically, you'd still want to make sure I was okay." "I do want you to be okay," I said with genuine sincerity. "That's why I'm encouraging you to develop actual self-sufficiency instead of dependency disguised as friendship. The best thing I can do for you as a friend is step back and let you handle your own responsibilities. It'll be really empowering once you adjust." The psychological reframing was masterful if I said so myself, turning her own independence rhetoric back on her while positioning my withdrawal of support as somehow being for her benefit. She knew exactly what I was doing but couldn't call it out without admitting she'd expected to keep using me. "When exactly are you moving?" she asked tightly. "Saturday morning. Coleman's helping with the workshop equipment, and I've already arranged a truck for the furniture I'm taking. I'll leave you the couch and kitchen table since they won't fit in the boathouse layout, so you'll have something to furnish the place for potential roommate showings." "How generous," she said with acid sarcasm. "I thought so. Oh, and I'll need to take back the climate control unit from the spare room since my restoration tools requires specific humidity levels. You might want to move your photography equipment before Saturday so nothing gets damaged during the transition." Her face went pale as she realized her thousands of dollars in cameras, lenses, and lighting gear had been stored in optimal conditions courtesy of my expensive dehumidifier. "Where am I supposed to store everything? Maybe invest in a proper equipment case with humidity control? They're only about $400 for a decent one. Or ask Marcus if the gallery has climate-controlled storage you could rent. I'm sure he'd want to protect your artistic tools." The mention of Marcus made her flinch slightly, probably realizing how much of her excitement about artistic freedom had been enabled by my practical support. Over the next 3 days, I watched Olivia cycle through every stage of grief while simultaneously trying to manipulate me back into my old role. She tried denial first, acting like I'd eventually change my mind once I calmed down from the breakup. Then bargaining, offering to pay a small portion of rent if I'd just stay through her gallery show. Then anger, accusing me of being vindictive and petty. Then depression, crying about how stressed she was and how she couldn't handle finding a roommate right now. None of it worked because I maintained the exact same cheerful, supportive friend energy she'd requested, meeting every emotional outburst with rational advice and boundary setting. "I'm really struggling with this, Ryan," she said Thursday night, trying the vulnerable approach. "I know you are, and that's completely valid," I responded with therapeutic neutrality. "Change is hard, especially when you're facing it alone. But you've got this, you're stronger than you think." "I don't feel strong right now." "Understandable. Have you tried journaling about these feelings? I've heard that really helps people process difficult transitions. Or maybe talk to Marcus. He seems like someone who understands the artistic temperament." She looked at me with something between hatred and desperation. "You've become a completely different person." "Not at all. I'm exactly the same person, just relating to you as a friend instead of a partner. This is what friendship looks like: supportive but boundaried, encouraging but not enabling, caring but not responsible for your well-being. It's actually really healthy if you think about it." By Friday evening, she'd posted desperate roommate ads on every platform. Urgent. Beautiful waterfront apartment, $1,400 per month, your own room, balcony access, near Arts District. Looking for responsible, drama-free roommate. Must be handy with repairs and financially stable. Available immediately. The irony of her demanding someone handy and financially stable was not lost on me, and apparently not lost on Harper either, who I caught smirking while reading the posting on her phone later that evening. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, calm water, ideal conditions for moving my life away from someone who'd mistaken my patience for weakness. Coleman showed up with his truck at 8, and we started loading workshop equipment while Olivia watched from the balcony with the same wounded expression she'd probably practiced for maximum sympathy impact. It didn't work. By noon, I'd transferred everything I owned to the boathouse, signed the final paperwork releasing me from the apartment lease after the current month, and officially started my new chapter. Olivia stood in the now half-empty living room, surrounded by the furniture I'd left her, looking small and lost and finally understanding what independence actually cost. Available as her emotional support system, handyman, and financial safety net for when the bohemian lifestyle got inconvenient. "And I'd still live here?" she continued, gathering momentum now that I wasn't arguing. "I mean, nothing has to change practically speaking. We're already comfortable with our arrangement, and I really can't afford anywhere else right now with the gallery show expenses. We're mature adults. We can absolutely maintain a friendship while sharing space." She actually thought I'd agree to this, to continuing to subsidize her life while she explored other options, to being her backup plan dressed up as friendship. I looked at her sitting there in the apartment I paid for, wearing the casual confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences for her choices, and something clicked into place. "You're right," I said calmly, watching her face light up with relief. "We absolutely should be friends." "Oh, thank God," she breathed out, shoulders dropping as tension released. "I was so worried you'd make this difficult, that you'd be angry or try to convince me we should stay together. This is so much healthier, so much more evolved than how most couples handle these transitions. Friends support each other's growth," I continued, keeping my expression neutral. "They respect each other's choices and boundaries. They want what's best for each other even when it's uncomfortable." "Exactly." She reached across the table to squeeze my hand, that old comforting gesture that used to mean something. "You always understand, Ryan. That's what I've always loved about you. You're so stable, so rational. Some guys would completely lose it right now, but you get it." I did get it, just not in the way she thought. I understood that she'd convinced herself she could have everything. The freedom to pursue whatever validated her artistic ego while keeping me locked in place as her practical support system. She wanted to feel like the protagonist of some romantic independent artist narrative while I played the understanding friend who'd always be there when she needed something fixed, paid for, or emotionally validated. "So we're okay?" she asked, smiling with genuine warmth now that she'd gotten what she wanted. "We're going to be just fine," I said, meaning every word but in a completely different context than she understood. That night, after she'd gone to bed in what was now apparently just her room, I sat on the balcony looking out at the marina, watching moonlight ripple across the water and listening to the gentle percussion of halyards against masts. 3 years of covering her rent, her utilities, her emergency car repairs, her equipment purchases, her gallery submission fees. All while she'd been shopping for something better, convinced she deserved more than a boat carpenter who actually showed up and did the work. The irony was almost beautiful in its symmetry. She wanted independence and friendship on her terms, and I was absolutely going to give her exactly that, along with every single consequence she'd been too entitled to anticipate. Friends don't subsidize each other's lifestyles. Friends don't drop everything for each other's emergencies. Friends maintain healthy boundaries and separate lives. I pulled out my phone and texted my buddy Coleman, who'd been trying to convince me for months to move into his converted boathouse with workshop space and harbor access. "That room still available? I can move in this weekend." His response came back within 2 minutes. "Hell yes, brother. About damn time. When you coming to look at it?" I smiled, typing back, "Tomorrow morning." "And Coleman? Don't mention this to anyone yet. I want to handle this my way." The next few days were going to be very interesting, watching Olivia discover what friendship actually looked like when the person she'd demoted decided to take her exactly at her word. The boathouse studio exceeded every expectation I'd had. Mornings started with coffee on the deck watching fishing boats head out past the breakwater. Evenings ended with the peaceful sound of water lapping against pilings while I worked on restoration projects under proper workshop lighting. Coleman turned out to be the ideal roommate situation since we were both focused on our respective businesses and respected each other's space naturally. Within 3 days of moving, I'd reorganized my entire workshop, started taking on 2 additional restoration contracts I'd previously turned down due to space limitations, and generally felt lighter than I had in months. The calls from Olivia started almost immediately, escalating in frequency and desperation as her romanticized vision of independent artist life collided with practical reality. That first Monday, my phone buzzed at 7 in the morning. "Ryan, I need your help. The bathroom sink is leaking everywhere and I can't figure out how to shut off the water. It's flooding the whole cabinet and I have a client call in 30 minutes." I sipped my coffee, watching a heron pick its way along the shoreline. "That sounds stressful. Did you try the shutoff valve under the sink? It's the oval-shaped handle on the right side pipe. Turn it clockwise until it stops. I can't reach it properly and I don't have the right tools and the water keeps spraying everywhere." "You want to call a plumber then? There's a good emergency service listed on the building's notice board in the lobby. I think they're called Harbor Plumbing Solutions. They're expensive for emergency calls, probably $200 minimum, but they're reliable and fast." Silence on her end. Then, "You're not going to come fix it? Ryan, you fixed that sink 3 times before. You know exactly what's wrong." "I probably do, but I'm not your maintenance person anymore. We're friends now, remember? Friends don't drop everything to fix each other's plumbing emergencies. Friends offer helpful advice and support each other in finding appropriate solutions. I'm being very supportive right now by recommending a quality service. This is ridiculous. It'll take 20 minutes for you to drive over. Closer to 30 with morning traffic, plus diagnostic time, plus repair time, plus the drive back. That's nearly 2 hours I'd be taking away from paying clients who actually hire me for my expertise. I'm sure you understand, you wouldn't want someone expecting free photography sessions just because you're friends, right?" I could hear her breathing hard, trying to control her frustration. "I can't afford $200 for a plumber right now." "Then maybe try YouTube tutorials for DIY repairs? There are tons of instructional videos for common sink issues. Very empowering to learn these skills yourself. Or ask your new roommate to help once you find one. You did specify handy in your ad." She hung up without responding. The plumber incident set the pattern for the next 3 weeks. Every crisis that would have previously warranted my immediate intervention now received cheerful, unhelpful friendship advice delivered with therapeutic enthusiasm. When her car started making grinding noises on a Tuesday afternoon, sounds like brake pads or possibly a wheel bearing. "You should definitely get that checked immediately. Don't drive it if the noise gets worse. There's an excellent mechanic shop about 2 miles from your apartment. Want me to text you their number?" When her vintage sailboat engine died during a Saturday photo shoot in the harbor, "Oh no, that's terrible timing for your shoot. Marine engine repair is tricky, You'll want someone who specializes in older models. I can recommend 3 different mechanics who do good work. Their rates run between $85 and $120 per hour depending on complexity, but they're worth it for quality repairs. When her laptop crashed with unbacked up photo files, that's a hard lesson about the importance of cloud storage and external backups. You might be able to recover some files through data recovery software. There are free versions you can download, though the paid ones have better success rates. IT specialists can sometimes retrieve data, but they charge around $300 minimum. Expensive education, but you'll definitely remember to back up after this. Every response was technically helpful while being practically useless, offering resources and encouragement instead of actual assistance. I was being the perfect supportive friend, validating her feelings, believing in her capabilities, encouraging her independence and growth. The fact that this left her struggling with every practical challenge she'd previously outsourced to me was simply the natural consequence of her choice. The really satisfying moments came when she tried to guilt-trip me using our shared history. "Remember when you said you'd always be there for me?" she asked during one particularly desperate call about her flooded bathroom at 2 in the morning. "I am here for you," I said warmly. "I'm on the phone right now providing emotional support and practical advice." Friends are there for each other emotionally. What you're describing, expecting someone to physically show up in the middle of the night to fix your plumbing, that's partner-level support, not friendship level. You specifically chose friendship, which comes with different expectations and boundaries. I'm respecting your choice by maintaining those appropriate boundaries. This is insane. You're being deliberately difficult. I'm being deliberately appropriate. There's a difference. Friends support each other's journey toward self-sufficiency. The best thing I can do for you right now is encourage you to develop problem-solving skills instead of enabling dependence. Have you called that emergency plumbing service yet? The sooner you call, the sooner they can get there. She actually screamed in frustration before hanging up. I smiled, set my phone down, and went back to sleep in my comfortable boathouse bedroom with no flooded bathrooms or dramatic emergencies requiring my attention. By week 3, Olivia's social media posts had shifted from artistic freedom celebration to thinly veiled complaints about fake friends and people who abandon you when you need them most. Her roommate search was going poorly based on the increasingly desperate ad modifications: urgent, waterfront apartment, flexible on move-in date, will consider lower rent for the right person, must be reliable and helpful with household stuff, previous experience with repairs a major plus. The requirements kept getting more specific and more revealing about what she actually needed, not a roommate, but a replacement version of me who'd subsidize her life and handle everything practical while she focused on being artistic. Harper, who I'd started noticing more often now that I wasn't consumed by Olivia's constant needs, found the whole situation entertaining based on the amused looks we'd exchange when passing in the marina parking area. She'd clearly been following the drama through the shared balcony wall and Olivia's increasingly frantic phone conversations conducted at volumes that didn't respect property boundaries. One Thursday evening, I was replacing rotten planking on a 1958 wooden sailboat when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Harper from the apartment next to Olivia. I know this is random, but I've been watching this whole situation unfold and I have to say, your commitment to malicious compliance is absolutely masterful. The way you're giving her exactly what she asked for while she slowly realizes what she actually gave up? Chef's kiss also. She just interviewed her 5th potential roommate this week and I could hear the whole thing through the wall. The guy asked if utilities were included and she said, 'My friend used to cover all that,' like you were some kind of public utility she lost access to." I laughed out loud, startling Coleman, who was working on an engine across the workshop. I texted back, "Glad someone appreciates the strategy. How bad was roommate candidate 5? He left after she explained she'd need help with minor household repairs and mentioned her bathroom floods regularly. I think your plumbing revenge is becoming a legitimate housing liability. Not my plumbing anymore. That's the beauty of friendship. Separate households, separate infrastructure problems. You're diabolical. I respect it. Also, she keeps asking if I've seen you around. I told her I barely know you, which is technically true, but she seems paranoid you're going to date someone from the building just to spite her. That would require spite, which would require caring enough to spite her. I'm just living my life and being a good supportive friend. Sure you are. Good luck with your boat project. Try not to enjoy her suffering too much. I smiled at my phone, appreciating Harper's dry humor and perceptive commentary. It occurred to me that I'd probably exchanged more genuine communication with her in that brief text conversation than I'd had with Olivia in months. The next crisis call came Saturday afternoon. Olivia's vintage sailboat engine, the one she used for her maritime photography sessions, had died completely during what was supposed to be a golden hour shoot with a paying client. Ryan, I'm stranded out past the South Marina with a client who paid $400 for this session and the engine won't turn over at all. I need you to come tow me back or at least look at it. This is an emergency. I was actually out on the water myself, testing a recently restored outboard motor, so I could see her boat from about 200 yards away, drifting near the channel markers. That definitely looks like an emergency. Have you called the Harbor Patrol? They provide towing services for disabled vessels. I think it's around $150 for non-members. I can't afford that right now. Can't you just come over? You're literally right there, I can see you. I'm in the middle of testing this motor for a client. Can't interrupt a professional obligation. The Harbor Patrol number is programmed into your marine radio, channel 16 for emergencies. They'll get you back safely. My client is getting impatient and this is costing me business. Understandable frustration. Unfortunately, marine engine failures happen. Once you're back at the dock, I can recommend those 3 mechanics I mentioned before. One of them specializes in vintage sailboat engines exactly like yours. Probably looking at $300 to $500 for diagnosis and repair depending on what failed. She said something extremely unladylike that I won't repeat, then the radio connection cut off as she presumably called the Harbor Patrol. I watched from a distance as they towed her boat back to the marina while she sat in the stern looking absolutely miserable next to an uncomfortable-looking client. Later that evening, she texted, I had to refund that entire session plus pay $150 for the tow. That's $550 lost because you refused to help for 20 minutes. I responded, that's a tough financial hit. Might be worth keeping an emergency fund for situations like this going forward. Most financial advisors recommend 3 to 6 months of expenses saved for unexpected costs. Building that up should probably be a priority before taking on expensive hobbies like vintage boat ownership. She didn't respond, probably because she was too angry to form words, or possibly because she'd finally realized that every interaction with me now would follow this exact pattern, enthusiastic support that offered nothing she actually needed. The texts from Harper started casually enough, sarcastic commentary on Olivia's increasingly desperate roommate interviews that Harper could hear through their shared wall, observations about the growing pile of packages outside Olivia's door suggesting online shopping therapy, updates on particularly dramatic phone conversations Olivia conducted at volumes that made privacy impossible. What began as neighbor gossip gradually shifted into actual conversations about our respective lives, careers, interests that had nothing to do with Olivia at all. Harper turned out to be fascinating in ways I hadn't expected. She worked as an architectural drafter for a firm designing sustainable waterfront developments, spent weekends volunteering at a greyhound rescue organization, and had this sharp observational humor that made even mundane topics entertaining. Our text conversations ranged from technical discussions about marine-grade materials and their applications in coastal architecture to debates about whether folding pizza counted as acceptable eating methodology. She was intelligent without being pretentious, ambitious without being self-absorbed, and genuinely passionate about her work in ways that reminded me why I'd fallen into boat restoration, because creating something beautiful and functional mattered more than whatever external validation it might bring. 3 weeks after I'd moved out, Harper texted at 11 on a Saturday night. Emergency situation. Are you available? My first thought was that Olivia had done something dramatic, but Harper's next message clarified. My greyhound Stella swallowed beach glass during our evening walk and she's choking. Olivia's at some gallery opening with Marcus and I don't know anyone else nearby. Can you help me get her to emergency vet? I was in my truck within 2 minutes. Harper met me in the parking lot, her rescued greyhound, An elegant gray and white dog with anxious eyes, making horrible retching sounds while Harper held her carefully. The emergency vet is in Portside, about 40 minutes north, she said, climbing into the passenger seat while cradling Stella. I called ahead and they're expecting us. I drove faster than strictly legal while Harper talked to Stella in soothing tones, one hand on the dog's head, occasionally glancing at me with grateful expressions. Thank you for this. I know it's late and you don't really know me and this is probably weird. It's not weird. Dogs are family. Of course I'm helping. We made it to the veterinary hospital in 32 minutes. The emergency staff took Stella immediately while Harper and I settled into the waiting room with its industrial lighting, outdated magazines, and that particular antiseptic smell common to all medical facilities regardless of species. Harper filled out paperwork with shaking hands, clearly more rattled than she'd initially let on. She's my third foster failure, she explained while writing. I was supposed to rehabilitate her and find her a permanent home, but she bonded to me so completely that I couldn't let her go. She's got anxiety issues from her racing background, scared of everything from ceiling fans to grocery bags. But she's the sweetest, gentlest creature. If something happens to her because I wasn't watching closely enough, you were watching, I interrupted. Dogs are unpredictable. She probably grabbed that glass in the 2 seconds you looked away. Don't do that thing where you make yourself responsible for freak accidents. She looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. You sound like you've dealt with guilt spirals before. 3 years of dating someone who made everything my responsibility taught me to recognize when people are taking on blame that doesn't belong to them. You're a good dog owner who got unlucky. That's all this is. We talked for the next 6 hours while veterinary staff worked on Stella. Harper told me about her career path from architecture school to her current firm, her frustration with projects that prioritize developer profits over actual livability, her dream of eventually starting a practice focused on affordable, sustainable housing. I told her about discovering boat restoration almost by accident when I'd helped my grandfather repair his fishing boat at 16. The satisfaction of bringing historic vessels back to functional beauty, the meditative quality of working with wood and tools and problems that had clear solutions. That's what appeals to me about architecture too, she said around 3 in the morning, both of us surviving on terrible vending machine coffee. The clarity of it. You have constraints, budget, materials, building codes, site conditions, and within those constraints you create something that improves people's lives. There's integrity in that process that feels missing from a lot of modern life. Exactly. With boat restoration, you're limited by the original design, the available materials, historical accuracy requirements, but within those limits you're solving this complex puzzle of how to preserve something beautiful while making it functional for modern use. It's creative problem solving with purpose. She smiled, tucking her legs under her in the uncomfortable plastic chair. Olivia used to complain that you talked about boats too much. She told me once through the wall during an argument that you cared more about dead wood than living relationships. She was probably right about the priority ordering by the end. Dead wood doesn't demand emotional labor and then get upset when you establish boundaries. Harper laughed, a genuine sound that made her whole face change. I heard that argument. I also heard her tell Marcus on the phone that you were sweet but intellectually unstimulating, and she needed someone who challenged her mind. Meanwhile, you're over here discussing the philosophical implications of creative constraints and she's posting Instagram selfies with captions about living authentically. To be fair, authenticity is very challenging when you're constantly performing for an audience. There's the intellectual stimulation she was missing. The veterinarian came out at 6:30 that morning looking exhausted but pleased. Stella had required surgery to remove the beach glass fragments, but she'd come through beautifully and would make a full recovery. Harper cried with relief, then apologized for crying, then cried more when I told her she didn't need to apologize for having normal human emotions. You can see her in about 20 minutes once she's out of recovery, the vet said. She'll need to stay here for observation today, but you should be able to take her home tomorrow if everything looks good. While we waited, Harper's phone buzzed with messages. She glanced at it, rolled her eyes, and showed me the screen. Olivia had sent a string of texts. Where are you? I came home at 3 a.m. and heard noises from your place. Is everything okay? Harper? I'm worried about you. Text me back, please. Did something happen? Your lights were on all night. Harper typed back. Stella had emergency surgery. She's going to be okay. Thanks for checking. Olivia's response came immediately. OMG, that's terrible. Do you need anything? I can come to the hospital if you need support. Harper showed me before responding. I'm good. Friend drove me and stayed with me. All handled. I watched Olivia's typing indicator appear and disappear several times before the response finally came. Which friend? Anyone I know. Harper grinned wickedly and typed. Just a neighbor who was available. Stella's awake now, I should go. Talk later. She put her phone away and looked at me. I'm a terrible person for enjoying that. You're a normal person enjoying a tiny piece of karma. There's a difference. We went back to see Stella, who was groggy but stable, her long graceful head resting on folded blankets while she looked at Harper with absolute trust and devotion. I stayed for another hour before heading back to the boathouse for a shower and maybe 3 hours of sleep before my afternoon appointments. Harper walked me to my truck in the hospital parking lot as morning light turned everything gold. Thank you, she said. Not just for driving but for staying. You didn't have to spend 6 hours in a waiting room with someone you barely know. I know you better after 6 hours of actual conversation than I knew Olivia after 3 years of cohabitation. Quality matters more than duration. She smiled, hesitant but genuine. I'd like to know you better too, if that's not weird given the whole Olivia proximity situation. Olivia chose to end our relationship and be friends. Friends don't get territorial about who their friends talk to. That would be girlfriend behavior, and she specifically opted out of that role. Good point. So as friends, would you want to grab actual coffee sometime? Not vending machine poison, real coffee from a place that understands bean-to-cup ratios. I would definitely be interested in that. Over the next few weeks, Harper and I fell into an easy pattern of communication that felt completely different from anything I'd experienced with Olivia. We texted throughout the day, her sending photos of architectural disasters she encountered during site visits, me sharing progress pictures of restoration projects. We met for coffee on Wednesday mornings before work, discovered we both loved farmers markets and started doing Saturday morning runs to the waterfront market for fresh produce and baked goods. When Harper mentioned her sailboat needed weatherproofing before winter storms, I volunteered immediately, not because I felt obligated or because she expected it, but because I genuinely wanted to spend time with her and the project gave us an excuse to be together. Working on her boat was entirely different from all the times I'd fixed things for Olivia. Harper worked alongside me, asking questions about technique, learning the processes, insisting on buying all the materials and treating me to dinner afterward as payment even though I would have done it for free. She valued my expertise without exploiting it, appreciated my help without expecting it, treated me like a partner in the project rather than hired labor. You're really good at this, she said, watching me seal the deck-to-hull joint with marine-grade caulking. It's meditative, right? The precision required, the satisfaction of doing it correctly. Exactly that. Most people don't get why I find this relaxing. Most people don't pay attention to the difference between doing something and doing something well. You care about the details, about the integrity of the work. That's rare and valuable. I looked at her, this woman who understood why craftsmanship mattered, who treated people with genuine respect, who had substance beneath the surface. Olivia used to say I was obsessive about minor details that nobody else would notice. Olivia's sailboat engine died because she never maintained it properly, and now she's paying someone else hundreds of dollars to fix what she could have prevented. Meanwhile, your clients' boats run beautifully for decades because you obsess over details nobody notices. I know which approach I respect more. We kept our developing relationship quiet, both enjoying the privacy and anticipating the inevitable moment when Olivia would discover that her overlooked neighbor had become important to the ex-boyfriend she'd expected to keep available. That moment was coming, and we both knew it would be spectacular, but for now we were content building something real without an audience, learning whether what we felt would develop into something worth the drama it would eventually cause. Olivia finally found a roommate 6 weeks after I moved out, and Harper texted me the details with barely contained amusement. New roommate just moved in. Marine biology grad student named Derek. Seems nice, polite, carried all his stuff up himself. Olivia's already explaining her household expectations at volume level 11. This should be interesting. I was working on refinishing teak handrails when the text came through, and I smiled at my phone while Coleman gave me a knowing look from across the workshop. That's the neighbor girl again, isn't it? The one you've been mysteriously busy with every weekend? Harper. And yes, you're dating Olivia's neighbor. That's some advanced level strategy right there. I'm dating someone I actually like spending time with who happens to live next to my ex. The location is coincidental. Sure it is. Does Olivia know yet? Not yet. We're keeping it quiet until the timing feels right. Coleman laughed. By which you mean until it'll cause maximum dramatic impact. He wasn't wrong, but I wasn't deliberately trying to cause drama. I was just enjoying getting to know Harper without Olivia's inevitable meltdown contaminating the early stages of something that felt genuinely promising. Harper and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm of spending several evenings per week together, alternating between my boathouse and her apartment, cooking meals together, watching documentaries about architecture and maritime history, taking Stella for long walks along the waterfront. It was easy and natural in ways my relationship with Olivia never had been, built on actual compatibility rather than physical attraction and convenience. The texts from Harper about Derek's situation started innocently enough with observations about normal roommate adjustment. Derek seems confused about the kitchen arrangement. Olivia just told him she needs the left side of the fridge for her specific dietary requirements and he gets the right side plus the door shelves. Then gradually escalated into concerning territory. Olivia asked Derek if he's handy with repairs since the bathroom sink is leaking again. He said he's a marine biologist, not a plumber. She looked genuinely confused, like she can't comprehend why a roommate wouldn't automatically handle household maintenance. A week into the arrangement, the real problems emerged. Harper sent me a long text after listening to an argument through the wall. So apparently Olivia expects Derek to split groceries unevenly in her favor because she eats less even though she keeps buying expensive organic specialty items that cost 3 times what his basic staples cost. He tried to suggest they just buy their own food separately and she accused him of not understanding how roommate relationships work. Pretty sure she's using your previous arrangement as her baseline for normal and he's discovering he moved in with someone who has wildly entitled expectations. I responded, "How's Derek handling it?" He seems patient but increasingly bewildered. I heard him very politely explain that he has a research stipend that covers his rent and basic expenses, but doesn't leave much extra for subsidizing someone else's lifestyle. She told him that's what credit cards are for. I think his exact response was, "That's not how responsible adults manage finances," and then there was a long silence. The situation deteriorated rapidly from there. Olivia, accustomed to having someone handle everything practical, apparently assumed Derek would naturally fill the boyfriend-shaped void I'd left. Derek, a focused graduate student with his own demanding schedule and limited funds, had zero interest in becoming her unpaid handyman and financial supplement. 2 weeks after Derek moved in, Harper called me instead of texting, which was unusual. You need to hear this to believe it. They're arguing right now about the internet bill. I could hear raised voices through her phone. What's the issue? Olivia just told Derek he should pay a larger share because his research uses more bandwidth. He pointed out they agreed to split utilities evenly, and that's literally not how internet billing works. It's not metered like water. She's insisting his video calls to his research team and data uploads are luxury usage that he should cover additionally. He just said, and I quote, "I'm not paying extra because you don't understand how digital infrastructure works." It's beautiful. How's she responding? Badly. She's doing that thing where she cries and says he's being mean to her and she's just trying to be fair and everyone takes advantage of her generous nature. Derek is not buying it. He just said if she needs more money for bills, she should consider taking more commercial photography work instead of holding out for fine art opportunities. Pretty sure she's about to explode. The explosion came 3 days later when Derek apparently refused to help her move furniture for a home studio setup she wanted to create. Harper texted me the aftermath. Derek just told Olivia he has comprehensive exams to study for and moving her furniture for free Instagram backdrops isn't his responsibility. She called him selfish. He called her entitled. She brought up that you used to help her with everything. He said that explained a lot about why you left. I think I'm in love with Derek's ability to set boundaries. Platonically, of course, since I'm obviously developing feelings for a certain boat restoration specialist. That last line made me smile wider than anything Olivia had said in the entire 3 years we'd dated. I texted back. Obviously platonic boundary appreciation only. Tell Derek he's fighting the good fight. Will do. Also, I think this living arrangement has maybe 2 more weeks before complete implosion. She just posted on Instagram about fake friends and people who don't understand artistic temperament. Her comment section is concerningly supportive. Lots of other aspiring artists validating her perspective that everyone else should accommodate their creative needs. Meanwhile, my relationship with Harper continued developing in quiet parallel to Olivia's domestic disaster. We'd progressed from casual dating to something more serious, though we hadn't formally defined it yet. Harper had met Coleman and immediately bonded over their shared appreciation for well-executed craftsmanship. I'd met her co-workers at a firm happy hour and spent 2 hours discussing the intersection of historical preservation and modern sustainability requirements with her boss, who offered me his card for potential consulting on waterfront restoration projects. Everything felt natural and reciprocal. We contributed equally to meals, split activity costs without discussion, helped each other because we wanted to rather than because we were expected to. The contrast with my previous relationship became more obvious every day. The final implosion of Olivia's roommate situation came exactly 17 days after Derek moved in. Harper called me at 9 on a Tuesday evening, laughing so hard she could barely speak. Derek's moving out. Right now. Tonight. What happened? Olivia tried to guilt him into covering her portion of this month's rent because her gallery show didn't sell as well as expected and she's between commission checks. She actually said, "That's what good roommates do. They support each other through financial rough patches." Derek very calmly responded that supporting each other means offering encouragement, not subsidizing poor financial planning. She accused him of not caring about her dreams. He said her dreams aren't his financial responsibility. She called you an asshole for abandoning her, said Derek was just like you, cold and unfeeling and obsessed with money over human connection. I winced at the secondhand accusation but wasn't surprised. How'd Derek respond? He said, "If Ryan's the guy who used to live here and cover all your expenses, he's not an asshole. He's a saint who finally developed self-respect. I'm not him, I'm not going to be him, and you need to figure out how to support yourself instead of looking for the next person to exploit." Then he started packing. Olivia's currently crying in her room while Derek loads boxes into his car. I think he's going to stay with someone from his research lab until he finds a real apartment with a normal roommate who understands basic adult responsibilities. That's got to be rough for her. It is, and I feel slightly bad about how much I'm enjoying watching this play out. She tried knocking on my door 20 minutes ago, presumably for sympathy, but I pretended I wasn't home because I'm a coward who doesn't want to get pulled into her drama. That's not cowardly, that's healthy boundary maintenance. You don't owe her emotional labor just because you share a wall. See, this is why I like you. You validate my avoidant tendencies and frame them as personal growth. Harper paused, and I could hear muffled sounds of Derek's moving activities through her phone. She's going to spiral after this. Back to square one with rent she can't afford, probably facing eviction within a month or 2. Part of me feels genuinely bad for her. You can feel bad for someone while recognizing they're experiencing natural consequences of their own choices. Those aren't mutually exclusive. True. Also, completely changing subjects because I don't want to spend our entire conversation discussing Olivia's problems. Are you free this weekend? My firm's having a sailing event on Saturday and I could bring a guest. Fair warning, it's mostly architects drinking wine and arguing about sustainable building materials, so it might be boring. That sounds exactly like my kind of event. I'm in. Perfect. And Ryan? When she inevitably discovers we're together, which is probably going to happen soon given how small this marina community is. I want you to know I'm fully prepared for whatever dramatic fallout occurs. What we're building is worth it. I felt something warm settle in my chest, the certainty that I'd found someone who saw me clearly and chose me anyway, not because of what I could provide but because of who I actually was. It absolutely is worth it. 3 months after I'd moved out, the property management company called with news I'd been expecting. Olivia had formally requested to terminate the lease early, which required all original tenants to sign release paperwork finalizing the arrangement. The appointment was scheduled for 2 o'clock on a Thursday at the apartment, and I'd need to appear in person to complete the legal documentation. I mentioned it to Harper that evening while we were cooking dinner at my boathouse, and she immediately understood the significance. "That's the day," she said, stirring pasta sauce while Stella dozed on the floor nearby. "The day Olivia finds out about us. Probably, unless we're extraordinarily careful about timing. The appointment's at 2, and you're usually home from work by 4. I just got promoted to senior drafter," Harper said with a smile that made her whole face light up. "My boss approved it this morning. Salary increase, my own project assignments, the works. I was going to tell you over dinner as a surprise, but now it's relevant because I'm taking Friday off to celebrate. Which means I could leave work early Thursday to celebrate the promotion eve." I understood what she was suggesting. "You want to come with me to the signing? I want to be there for you during what's probably going to be an uncomfortable situation. I also want to celebrate my promotion with someone who actually appreciates what it means for my career. And yes, fine, I'm morbidly curious to see Olivia's face when she realizes her overlooked neighbor is with the man she thought she'd keep on standby forever. Is that terrible? It's human. And I'd love to have you there, both for support and to celebrate your promotion properly. You worked incredibly hard for this. Senior drafter before 30. My parents are going to lose their minds." She paused, turning to face me fully. "Are you sure you're okay with me being there? It's going to cause a scene." Olivia chose drama when she decided to pursue independence while expecting me to remain available. If she can't handle seeing me move forward with someone else, that's a natural consequence of her decision. Plus, I'd rather celebrate your success than worry about her feelings. Thursday arrived with perfect autumn weather, clear skies, temperature dropping toward evening, the kind of day that made the marina look like a postcard. Harper met me at the boathouse around 1:30, dressed professionally from her workday in tailored pants and a blazer that made her look competent and confident. She'd brought a bottle of wine for our celebration dinner later, and her excitement about the promotion was infectious. We drove to the apartment together, and I felt her hand slip into mine as we walked through the parking lot toward the building entrance. "Last chance to back out," I said. "Not a chance. I'm all in." The property manager, an efficient woman named Patricia who I'd dealt with several times regarding lease matters, was already waiting in the lobby with her tablet and paperwork. "Mr. Hayes, good to see you. We're meeting in the apartment since Ms. Chen requested to be present during the signing. She has a witness as well, her new potential roommate who'll be taking over the lease if approved." We took the elevator up, Harper's hand still in mine, both of us knowing the next 20 minutes would be memorable. Patricia knocked on the apartment door, and Olivia answered looking noticeably different from 3 months ago, thinner in an unhealthy way, dark circles under her eyes poorly concealed with makeup, her signature confidence replaced by something brittle and desperate. She'd clearly been struggling more than Harper's second-hand reports had suggested. "Ryan," she said, her voice catching slightly. Then her gaze shifted to Harper standing beside me, to our linked hands, and I watched her face cycle through confusion, recognition, and dawning horror in rapid succession. "And you brought Harper." "Hi, Olivia," Harper said with genuine politeness. "Hope you don't mind. Ryan and I had plans right after this, so I tagged along." We entered the apartment that had once been partially mine, now looking shabby and neglected in ways it never had when I'd lived there. The furniture I'd left behind showed signs of damage, water rings on the coffee table, stains on the couch cushions, general disorder that suggested Olivia had given up on basic maintenance. Standing awkwardly near the kitchen was a woman who looked to be in her 40s, professionally dressed but wearing an expression of someone seriously reconsidering their life choices. "This is Teresa," Patricia said. "She's a college instructor who's interested in taking over the lease if we can resolve the early termination with all parties." Teresa nodded at me, then at Harper, clearly uncomfortable with whatever tension she'd walked into. We gathered in the living room, Patricia setting up paperwork on the coffee table while Olivia stared at Harper and me with barely suppressed emotion. I could see her mind working, processing the implications of us arriving together, the casual intimacy of our body language, the way Harper naturally positioned herself beside me like she belonged there. "So the termination is straightforward," Patricia began, oblivious to the emotional undercurrents. "Mr. Hayes has already been removed from active rent responsibility as of last month per the original agreement. This signing releases him from any future liability associated with the property. Ms. Chen will either need Ms. Teresa here to qualify as a suitable replacement tenant, or she'll need to cover the lease termination fee and vacate by month's end." "I can cover the screening requirements," Teresa said quickly, clearly eager to resolve this and escape. "I have references, pay stubs, everything needed. I just need to know the situation is stable before committing." Olivia finally found her voice, though it came out sharper than probably intended. "Everything's completely stable. My previous roommate didn't work out due to incompatibility, but I've learned from that experience and I'm ready to be a better roommate going forward." Teresa looked unconvinced but nodded politely. Patricia pushed the first document toward me. "Mr. Hayes, if you'll sign here and here, that releases you from all lease obligations and finalizes your departure from the property." I signed both places, acutely aware of Olivia watching my every movement. As I set down the pen, Harper's hand came to rest on my shoulder naturally, a casual gesture of partnership that detonated what remained of Olivia's composure like a depth charge hitting a ship's hull. "How long?" Olivia asked, her voice tight and controlled in that way that meant she was barely holding back something much bigger. "How long what?" I asked, though I knew exactly what she meant. "How long have you two been?" She gestured vaguely between Harper and me, unable to finish the sentence. "We've been dating for about 6 weeks, Harper said calmly. "Officially, anyway. We've been getting to know each other since shortly after you and Ryan broke up." 6 weeks, Olivia repeated, her laugh brittle and humorless. "You moved on in 6 weeks." "Actually, I moved on the night you told me we were better as friends," I corrected gently. "I just happened to meet someone worth dating about a month later." "Someone worth dating?" Olivia's voice was rising now, all pretense of composure cracking. "You mean my neighbor? The person who lives right next door, who's been watching this whole situation, who probably thinks, 'I think Ryan deserved better than how you treated him,'" Harper interrupted, her tone still polite but firm. "I think he's a remarkable person who values commitment, craftsmanship, and genuine partnership. And I think you had something valuable and didn't recognize it until after you'd thrown it away." The room went silent except for the sound of Patricia clearing her throat uncomfortably. Teresa was studying her phone like it contained the secrets of the universe, clearly desperate to be anywhere else. Olivia's face had gone red, her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "This is unbelievable. You're really going to stand there in what used to be our home with someone else and act like I'm the villain here? I broke up with you because I needed space to grow, to pursue my art without feeling suffocated by your constant presence and expectations. You broke up with me because you wanted freedom without consequences," I said quietly. "You wanted to explore whatever was happening with Marcus and other opportunities while keeping me available as your emotional support and practical problem solver. You explicitly asked to remain friends, and I agreed. Friends don't get territorial about who each other dates. That's girlfriend behavior, and you specifically opted out of that position. I didn't opt out of basic human decency. Going after my neighbor, someone who witnessed everything, who probably listened through the walls while Harper actually laughed at that. I wasn't gone after. I texted Ryan first, actually. After watching him handle your meltdowns with more patience and grace than you deserved, after seeing him establish healthy boundaries while you spiraled trying to find someone else to exploit. He intrigued me because he was genuine and principled. Everything that developed after that was mutual and organic. How convenient for both of you, Olivia's voice was shaking now, tears starting to streak her makeup. You get to build your perfect little relationship while I'm here struggling alone, dealing with roommates who abandon me and rent I can't afford and a career that's going nowhere because I don't have anyone supporting me anymore. You have exactly the independence you asked for, I said. The fact that it's harder than you expected isn't my responsibility to fix. You wanted to be free to pursue your art without compromise. You're free. What you do with that freedom is entirely up to you. Patricia stood up, clearly deciding this was escalating beyond property management territory. I think we have all the signatures we need. Teresa, if you'll come with me, we can complete your screening application in my office downstairs and let these folks have their privacy. Teresa practically sprinted toward the door, muttering something about calling later to confirm. Patricia gathered her papers efficiently and followed, leaving the three of us in heavy silence. Olivia stood in the center of the room that had once been our shared space, looking lost and furious and devastated all at once. Harper squeezed my hand gently, a silent question about whether I wanted to leave immediately or say something final. I looked at Olivia, this woman I'd spent 3 years loving and supporting, who'd convinced herself she deserved better than what we'd had, and felt only distant sympathy for the consequences she was living with. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, meaning it sincerely. I hope your art career takes off. I hope you find a living situation that works. I hope you eventually understand that partnership means mutual support, not one person carrying the other. But mostly I hope you learn that people who genuinely care about you aren't obligated to remain available after you've decided they're not good enough. You were always good enough, she whispered, tears falling freely now. I was just confused and scared and stupid, and by the time I realized what I'd given up, you'd already moved forward, Harper finished gently. Because that's what healthy people do after relationships end. They grieve, they learn, they find someone better suited to who they actually are. We turned toward the door together, and I paused at the threshold for one last thought. Next time you find someone who plans their life around making you happy, who remembers details that matter to you, who shows up consistently and treats you like you're valuable, try appreciating it while you have it instead of waiting until it's gone. As we walked down the hallway toward the elevator, I heard the apartment door close behind us with a final click of absolute finality. 18 months after that signing day confrontation, I stood on the deck of the cottage Harper and I had purchased together, watching morning light paint the harbor in shades of gold and rose while she made coffee in our kitchen. The property was a 1920s fisherman's cottage we'd found listed as a fixer-upper with potential, which in real estate terms meant it was structurally sound but cosmetically neglected. We'd spent 6 months renovating it ourselves, me handling the carpentry and restoration work, Harper redesigning the interior layout for better functionality, both of us learning tile installation through YouTube tutorials and sheer determination. The result was a home that felt entirely ours, built through shared effort and compatible vision. The ground floor housed my expanded boat restoration workshop with direct access to our private dock, while Harper's architecture office occupied the converted sunroom with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water. We designed our lives to complement each other rather than compete, supporting individual ambitions while building something together that neither of us could have created alone. Through mutual friends and the inevitable small-town gossip network of the marina community, I'd followed Olivia's trajectory from a distance with the detached interest you'd have for any acquaintance facing difficulties. After Teresa had met Olivia during that disastrous signing appointment and sensibly declined to move in, Olivia had burned through her remaining options quickly. She tried listing the apartment for sublease at inflated rates to cover costs she couldn't afford, got no responses, then desperately lowered the price to barely market rate. Even then, potential roommates would tour the space, hear Olivia's expectations about household responsibilities and financial flexibility, and politely disappear. The lease termination fee she'd been trying to avoid became inevitable. According to Lisa, a mutual friend who still maintained peripheral contact, Olivia had exhausted her limited savings paying the $3,500 penalty and final month's rent. She'd moved her belongings into storage and returned to her parents' farmhouse 2 hours inland, the same place she'd spent her childhood swearing she'd escape from permanently. The irony of someone who'd rejected stability and partnership to pursue artistic independence ending up back in her childhood bedroom was not lost on anyone who knew the full story. Her social media presence had shifted dramatically from the carefully curated aesthetic perfection she'd maintained during our relationship to sporadic posts with increasingly bitter captions about the art world's lack of support for genuine talent, the impossibility of making it as a photographer without family money, the prevalence of fake people who abandon you when you need them most. Her comment sections, once full of supportive fellow artists, had gradually gone quiet as people tired of the negativity. She tried painting herself as the victim of my betrayal, with Harper, posting vague references to men who move on suspiciously fast and neighbors who violate friendship codes. But the narrative never gained traction because too many people remembered the actual timeline, that she'd initiated the breakup, that she'd explicitly requested friendship, that she'd been actively pursuing other options with Marcus before even ending our relationship. Her roommate situation with Derek had become minor legend in the Marina community as a cautionary tale about entitled expectations and poor boundaries. Marcus, the gallery owner who'd encouraged her artistic independence rhetoric, had apparently dated her briefly after our breakup before moving on to his next protégé. Lisa mentioned seeing Olivia's work in a group show at a smaller gallery 6 months ago, photographs that were technically competent but emotionally hollow, the kind of art created for external validation rather than genuine expression. Nothing had sold. She'd picked up occasional commercial photography work, real estate listings, local business headshots, the kind of practical assignments she'd once considered beneath her artistic vision. The same work that could have provided stable income during our relationship if she'd been willing to balance commercial pragmatism with artistic passion. Her parents, from what I'd heard, were supportive but frustrated, unable to understand why their daughter with a college degree and marketable skills was struggling so dramatically when other people managed to build careers and support themselves. They couldn't know, that Olivia had spent 3 years learning to rely on someone else to handle everything difficult, that she'd built her entire identity around being an artist who deserved support rather than someone who created value through work. I felt genuinely sorry for her situation while recognizing I bore no responsibility for the choices that led there. Meanwhile, my life had expanded in directions I couldn't have imagined during those years of subsidizing someone else's dreams while neglecting my own growth. The boat restoration business had doubled its client base after I'd moved to Coleman's workshop, the additional space and resources allowing me to take on larger projects with better profit margins. Word spread in the maritime community about quality work delivered on schedule, and I developed a reputation that brought clients from surrounding states. Harper's promotion to senior drafter had led to her passing her architecture licensure exams 6 months ago, an achievement we'd celebrated with the kind of genuine joy that comes from watching someone you love reach goals they've worked toward for years. She'd started taking on small independent residential projects in addition to her firm work, designing sustainable coastal homes that balanced environmental responsibility with practical livability. We'd become her own best advertisement. The cottage renovation showcased her design philosophy while my restoration work demonstrated the kind of craftsmanship that made her architectural visions achievable. We'd developed a friend group of other professionals in creative fields who actually understood the difference between supporting someone's dreams and enabling their avoidance of responsibility. Harper's architecture colleagues, Coleman and his marine mechanic friends, a couple who ran a sustainable furniture workshop, people who built businesses through competence rather than expecting others to fund their aspirations. Our social gatherings involved actual conversations about techniques and challenges, shared meals where everyone contributed, relationships built on mutual respect rather than transactional dependency. The contrast with my previous relationship became more apparent the longer I lived without that constant drain of energy and resources. Harper and I split everything equally: mortgage, utilities, groceries, household projects, emotional labor, decision-making. When one of us had a difficult week, the other stepped up naturally without resentment or expectation of reciprocal service. When we disagreed about renovation choices or scheduling conflicts, we talked through options like adults rather than one person demanding accommodation while the other acquiesced to avoid conflict. She valued my opinions, appreciated my skills, celebrated my successes as enthusiastically as her own. I did the same for her, not from obligation but from genuine investment in her happiness and growth. Last month, I proposed to Harper on the deck where I now stood watching the sunrise. Nothing elaborate or performative, just the two of us after dinner, talking about the future we wanted to build, and me asking if she'd want to make it official. She'd said yes before I'd even finished the question, laughing and crying simultaneously while Stella danced around us in confused excitement. The ring was modest compared to what I'd once saved for Olivia, but Harper had been more moved by the inscription I'd had engraved inside, "Built together, built right." She understood what it meant, the philosophy we'd both embraced about relationships requiring equal partnership and shared effort. We'd set a wedding date for next spring, planning a small ceremony at the cottage with immediate family and close friends. Nothing designed for social media validation or external impression, just a celebration of commitment we'd already been living for the past year and a half. I heard the sliding door open behind me, and Harper appeared with 2 coffee mugs, her hair still messy from sleep, wearing one of my old work shirts and looking more beautiful than any carefully curated photograph could capture. "Thinking deep thoughts?" she asked, handing me coffee and leaning against the railing beside me. "Thinking about how different everything is now compared to 2 years ago. How much better? Better enough that you don't regret how things ended with Olivia?" "I regret the time I wasted not recognizing what I deserved. I don't regret anything that led me here, to this." I gestured at the cottage, the workshop, the life we'd built. "To you." She smiled, that genuine expression that still made something warm unfold in my chest. "Lisa texted me last night. Apparently Olivia's back in town staying with a friend, trying to rebuild her photography business with a new approach. More commercial focus, fewer artistic pretensions. Lisa thinks she might have actually learned something from everything that happened. Good for her, genuinely. I hope she figures it out. No bitterness at all? Why would there be? She gave me exactly what I needed even if it wasn't what she intended. The breakup freed me to find someone who actually wanted partnership instead of patronage. The friendship request let me step back and watch her experience consequences without feeling responsible. Her rejection of everything I offered taught me to value those qualities instead of apologizing for them. She did me a favor, just not the kind she imagined. Harper leaned her head against my shoulder, both of us watching boats begin their morning routines in the harbor. "You know what I think about sometimes? That night at the veterinary hospital with Stella, talking for 6 hours about architecture and boat restoration and creative constraints. If Olivia hadn't ended things, if you'd stayed in that apartment subsidizing her lifestyle, we never would have had that conversation. I would have just been the neighbor who occasionally waved from her balcony. Instead, you're the person I'm building a life with. The person who understands that love isn't about grand gestures or financial support, it's about showing up consistently, contributing equally, choosing each other repeatedly through normal daily existence." "Exactly that. Though I do appreciate your grand gestures occasionally. That custom bookshelf you built for my architecture references was pretty spectacular." "That wasn't a grand gesture, that was practical problem solving that happened to involve wood and tools. See, this is why we work. You think building custom furniture is practical problem solving. I think it's the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for me. We're both right." We finished our coffee as the sun fully cleared the horizon, then went inside to start our respective workdays, her reviewing blueprints for a new sustainable housing development, me completing the final varnish coat on a 1962 wooden sailboat that would be delivered to its owner next week. Separate work, shared space, compatible existence. That evening, while we were making dinner together in the kitchen we'd renovated with our own hands, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, but curiosity won out. "Ryan, this is Olivia. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from and I don't expect you to respond. I'm back in town trying to restart my career and I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened. I wanted to say I'm sorry for how I treated you, for taking you for granted, for expecting you to support me without appreciating the sacrifice that required. You were right about everything. I needed independence but I wanted it subsidized, I needed to grow but I wanted someone else to carry the weight. Watching you build a real partnership with Harper while I struggled alone taught me more than I wanted to learn about what matters in relationships. I'm genuinely happy for you both. You deserve the life you've built. I hope someday I can build something half as real. I showed the message to Harper, who read it carefully before handing the phone back. Are you going to respond? I don't think so. She's processing her growth, which is good for her, but I'm not part of that journey anymore. Responding would just pull me back into her narrative when I've completely moved on from it. That's probably wise. Though I have to admit, it's nice that she finally recognized what she lost. She didn't lose me. She threw me away, then was surprised when I didn't wait around to be picked back up. There's a difference. Harper smiled, kissing my cheek before returning to chopping vegetables. There absolutely is. And I'm grateful every day that she made the choice she did, because it led you directly to someone who knows exactly what she has. Later that night, lying in bed in the cottage we owned together, in the life we'd built through genuine partnership, I thought about the journey from that Wednesday evening when Olivia had delivered her rehearsed breakup speech. She'd wanted independence and friendship on her terms, expecting to maintain access to my support while pursuing whatever validated her ego. Instead, she'd learned that friendship meant boundaries, that independence meant responsibility, that people who genuinely value you don't wait around after you've decided they're insufficient. My quiet revenge hadn't been hatred or malice. It had been simply honoring her request literally, offering endless encouragement but zero rescue, watching her self-sufficient fantasy collapse under reality's weight while I built something authentic with someone who actually wanted what I offered. The greatest vindication wasn't her apology or recognition of what she'd lost. It was waking up every morning next to someone who chose me deliberately, who contributed equally to our shared life, who understood that real partnership meant building together rather than one person carrying the other. Olivia had taught me what I wouldn't accept anymore. Harper taught me what I deserved all along. And that difference made every difficult moment of the past worth experiencing to reach this future I was living now.